Hello you plonkers and welcome back today to another video on the Drewzy channel. Drewzy is back talking about the AFL. It's what the people have been crying out for. Is Drewzy going to be making AFL content in 2023? That's a question I've been getting a lot. Obviously, man's just moved to England. I'm currently living in England, travelling Europe, having an absolute blast. Will I be making AFL videos in 2023? Probably, I reckon. Maybe not on this channel though. Maybe on the True Footy YouTube channel, the best YouTube channel in the AFL scene, in my opinion. So me and Jesse are going to be collabing a lot more over there. And just because I'm in Europe, different time zones, not watching as much footy, I reckon more of my content on my channel will be tailored to my life. And then everything AFL related will probably be more on the True Footy channel. That's how it's looking at the moment, but I can't tell you exactly. If I could give you a straight answer, I would, but until the season comes back, I genuinely don't know. Aside from living in England, another reason I may not be making as much AFL content is because I now run my own business, Drewzy's Athlete Academy, to help young people like yourselves reach their strength and fitness goals. If you're a footballer trying to get the best out of your footy this season, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm qualified, I've been to uni, I've got the experience in the sport industry. I'm not some schmuck on TikTok with a six-pack that's trying to sell some programs. I've genuinely trained athletes before and know how to get the best out of state-level athletes, so I can help you as well. But I don't just help athletes. I've got muscle bulking programs on people that want to add muscle to their frames, gym beginner programs to help out kids like myself, where I was a few years ago, a real skinny kid. If you're starting out at the gym or you're an athlete, it's really important that you don't put any guesswork into your training, preparation, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. Make sure you have a professional helping you through to achieve your goals. Drewzy's Athlete Academy is here to help. If you want any further information on that, you can head to the drewzy.athleteacademy Instagram page or the website. I'll leave a link in the description. And at the moment, I'm actually doing a free 15 to 20 minute video consult for you guys. So if you guys have any questions about training, nutrition, anything like that, if you want help to achieve your goals, I'm running 20 minutes for free to talk to you guys and see how we can work together to achieve your goals. But enough about England, enough about training, enough about Drewzy's Athlete Academy. We're here for the footy, Drewzy, and that's what I'm going to bring you. 2023 season predictions. Let's go! As with every AFL predictions video I do, I have to state that predictions means before words or words before. So because it's predictions, no one actually knows what's going to happen in AFL season 2023. So you can't abuse me in the comments until the season's done. Then come back to the video once the season's done and laugh at all the ones I got wrong. Absolutely no issue with. But until then, you know as much as I do. Simples. Right, as I always do, ladder positioning, 18 to Juan, and then also at the end, Coleman, Brownlow, flag winner. Are you ready? Let's go. In 18th place, I have GWS. I think that 2019 crop of GWS stars, there's still some there, but they're sort of approaching the end of their primes. Not saying the end of their careers, the end of their primes. And all of those other players that have left, your Jeremy Camerons, Tarantos, Hoppers, these guys, they're being traded for young draft picks. So you've got this weird mix of superstars at the end of their prime and young guns that are just coming into the AFL. And I just don't quite think the list demographics of GWS currently match. They're entering a new era of their club with their new coach as well. I just think it's going to be a bit of a weird year for GWS again. Maybe they'll finish a little bit higher, but I don't think they'll make any waves. Taranto, Hopper and Tanner Bruin leaving is a massive kick in the teeth to the Giants. And I think as we've seen over the last 2 years, you can't replace these massive stars just with draft picks or in trades. GWS again, the short end of the stick. I reckon they'll get the spoon this year. In 17th, I've got the Essendon Bombers. Just because I just don't think that Essendon have the list quality to take this club where they need to go. I reckon they've got about 8 players that are pretty good and they should be in their side when they start to actually do things. But even at the moment, they're still inconsistent, these players. And it's no surprise when you're getting pumped every week. They're still developing some of their youth. I don't think any side is really scared to play Essendon. And let's not forget all of the off-field drama that's happened over the last year and over the last 10. So Essendon, they're in a shit spot. I think they're going to continue to be in a shit spot, which is 17th. In 16th, I've got West Coast. Last year was a real nail in the coffin for West Coast for any real premiership hopes that they had with that same crop of players. I think it's safe to say that Nick Nat and Andrew Gaff are not going to be premiership players at the West Coast Eagles. And I don't think their ladder position will change drastically for the next 2 to 3 years. I think they'll stay around this area. But this year should be approached with more optimism for West Coast. Last season they came into the year probably expecting more than finishing 17th, which is why they were disappointed. But they're clearly in a completely new era of their club now. They have to get around their team. They can't be moaning when their team's getting thumped, because it's just the new kids learning. Elijah Hewitt, Ruben Jinby, they're great players that they've added to their list that are going to be there for a long time. I don't really think I need to say too much more about West Coast. They're entering a rebuild, and as a fan that's experienced plenty of rebuilds in my time, you just got to get behind your team, support them, be optimistic, and support the next generation of players coming through. But knowing Eagles fans as I do, their fans will probably stop attending the games, and there'll be 15,000 people at Optus watching them next season. In 15th, I have North Melbourne, and last year was an absolute train crash, and it was definitely a backward step for the Roos. I think their list is better than what last season's results showed, and by adding the best coach of the 21st century in Alistair Clarkson, they're definitely going to improve. They had a good draft, pretty decent off-season, retained all of their star players just about, other than Jason Horne-Francis, but who cares about him? I reckon they're not going to finish on the bottom. I reckon they're going to start to climb, and I think they're better than the bottom 3 sides I've just listed. In 14th, I have the Adelaide Crows, and by all reports, I think their rebuild so far has been a success. They've improved year on year so far since the rebuild, but in the off-season, I just don't think they added enough to make a big jump in 2023. I think the Crows are at the stage in their rebuild where they're clearly better than all of the other rebuilding sides. They're more mature than these other sides. They've been in this rebuild for about 4 years now, 3 years, and they've continued to improve. But I think you get to this sticking point as a club where you've got to start competing with the top 8 teams, and the teams that are just above you, you've really got to start winning those games as well. Analysis. Basically, Adelaide, they're a young side. I don't think they're quite ready to make the jump to compete for the 8, and although they're not going to make the 8 in my opinion, I just think they've got to gain the ability to compete with the top sides in the competition, and that's just earning your stripes as a rebuilding side, as Freo have done in the past few years. I always compare Adelaide to Freo. Maybe they could be a surprise package, but I just don't think they're there yet. In 13th, I have St Kilda, who started 2022 in red-hot form, absolutely stunk up the second half of the season, and then sacked their coach, who a few months earlier had their side in the top 4. I mean, St Kilda is an absolute shambles. And at points last season, they did play exciting football, particularly in that first half of the year. But I think bringing in Ross Lyon, you sort of lose that flair, that excitement, that gung-ho footy. I reckon he just brings stability, structure, and a bit of discipline. Get your foundations right. But for me, Ross Lyon, past it, too stubborn. Don't think his coaching style really suits the modern game, in my opinion. Could be a 10-year step back for the Saints. I think outside St Kilda's top 10 players, none of them players really start in any best 22 in the comp. I reckon they've got a bunch of just role players that are sort of just not good enough, really. And on top of that, I just rate all the other teams above St Kilda right now. And I think that's a fair statement to make. So St Kilda, you're getting put in 13th, Jesus. In 12th, I have the Hawthorn Football Club. I'm a big fan of what Sam Mitchell's been doing this rebuild. I think they've got a very strong young spine, and their role players around the ground are doing their job week in, week out. They shipped off Tom Mitchell and Jaeger O'Meara, who at face value you would consider stars, but they made it clear that they didn't want these players in the side, and you're going to have these younger guys coming into the midfield who Sam Mitchell will develop for the next decade. They're a rebuilding list, and I think they're probably punching above their weight in this season predictions, but they've got such great coaching and such a great club culture that they can lean into at Hawthorn. Maybe I'm overrating the Hawks here, but to be fair, I just rate them. I like what they're doing. I've liked the rebuild. I like their players, and there's a lot of positives for Hawthorn, which you can't really say about the other teams that are below them on this ladder predictions. So Hawthorn, for me, I'm going to finish in 12th. In 11th, I'm going to put the Gold Coast Suns, who finished in 12th last year, so climbed the ladder spot by 1 place. They're going to have Ben King back in the side, so we hope to see him back in firing form, living up to the potential which we knew he had pre-ACL injury. But I think Gold Coast now have a list who have completely bought in. There's not been a mass exodus like there has been in previous years with big stars. Obviously, Isaac Rankin's left, but is he really that much of a big player for Gold Coast, a player that slots into the forward pocket with a lot of flair? Absolutely, he's a gun, but is he pivotal to the premiership success if they are ever to breach that ceiling at Gold Coast? I don't think he's that much of a loss. But we now know that Lukosius, Rao, Anderson, they're all committed. Tuke Miller's one of the best players in the competition. They're getting these role players from around the comp, guys like Brandon Ellis, Markov, even Connor Blakely. These like experienced guys that are just going to bring up the next generation of Gold Coast Suns. I think I like what they're doing there. They played some great footy last year, and of course they had some disappointing results as well. But I just think they're building. I think with all the players buying in, they can only improve. So I want to say they improve by 1 spot and finish in 11th. In 10th, I have the Western Bulldogs. They were the most underwhelming team for me in 2022 with the amount of list talent that they have. They just had to scrap for every single win, it felt like, the Dogs. They always struggled to regain momentum in game if they could get it at all. For example, the Freo final, they had the momentum. As soon as Freo got on top of the game, it was just game over. The Dogs just could not get a grip. They've got in Rory Lobb. Is he the answer to all their questions? I don't think he is. From a Freo fan's experience, he's inconsistent. He's a very frustrating player to have on your team. And down back, they're still pretty thin, although they've added Jed Buslinger, a gun from WA, best key defender in the draft, who I'm very excited to see play at the AFL level. Dunkley out is a massive loss as well, although it might bring a bit more balance to their midfield, because they did have a lot of quality in that inside mid position, so it might bring a bit more continuity week to week for the Bulldoggies. I'm not saying they couldn't make the 8, but I just don't think it is as likely as the other teams that I've put in the 8 making the 8, mate. So I think their fate will be outside of the top 8 in 2023. 8. I'm a spoon, bruv. In 9th, I have Adelaide. Port are a real weird one. I don't think anyone actually knows where they're at as a club. And I say that because a few years ago, they were like the toughest side in the competition. No one wanted to play away at Adelaide Oval against the Power because their fans get behind them. They hunted in packs. The pressure was immense. And then, just in the last 2 years, they just haven't quite had that same sting. I think they're a really exciting side to watch when they're on, and they've just added to that with Jason Horne-Francis and Willie Rioli. But I reckon they're a little bit thin down back. Even though they added Alia, I just think down back, their stocks aren't too high just yet. I know they've got some young kids coming through there that are still developing, but just a little bit thin down back. And I reckon Port Adelaide are just holding on like a man holding on to a girlfriend that he needs to dump. I reckon Port Adelaide, they just got to get rid of Ken Hinkley at this point. It's the end of his contract this year, so for Ken Hinkley, it's flag or bust. There's no way he gets re-signed. They need some freshness, rejuvenated, dispersed into Alberton Street, I think they train at. I'm waffling at this point, but Port, it could just be another weird one for you this year, I reckon. Under the same coaching staff, you got a couple better players, but have you really strengthened to the point of contending for a flag? I don't think so, and I think 90% of you fans will probably agree with me at Port Adelaide that Ken Hinkley is not the man that's going to win you a flag. Maybe the universe changes in the next 12 months and everything changes, but I don't see it happening, and I reckon Port, it could just be another weird years for you. Right, top 8 time. I reckon Carlton cracked the top 8 and finish in 8th. Carlton were extremely unlucky not to make the top 8 last year, and I think some of their footy last year was deserving to be a top 8 side. But we all know what happened to Carlton at the end of last year. They didn't make the 8, they puddled it again. Alright, no further salt from me, Carlton fans. You can keep watching. As I said, their best footy is great, and they show it in majority of games, but they can never bring it for 4 quarters. I reckon the hurt from 2022 they will heal from and learn from. I reckon they'll start to bring their best footy for longer periods in games. Carlton will be a hard side to crack for any team in 2023, and I reckon they'll play finals. There's a lot of hype about them, obviously. Massive club. I don't think they're a top 4 side just yet. I think they have the stars for a top 4 side, but at the moment, that sort of bottom 6 of the Carlton best 22 just isn't good enough. They're still trying to find their best 22, always chopping and changing their side, so they need to strengthen the list. I don't think they did too well in the off-season. Blake Acres is alright, but is he what they need? Maybe. We'll see. Carlton will finish in 8th. In 7th, I've got the Sydney Swans, and this was probably the toughest call to make in this video. The reason I've got them dropping from the heights of 2022, they were such a great side, played such great footy. I've got them dropping to 7th in 2023, purely because we've seen in recent times, teams that lose grand finals, they lose a piece of themselves. They're not the same side the next year. On top of that, Point 2, Sydney have not strengthened their list for me enough this season. I think it's so important in every single sport, no matter how good your team is, you have to add squad depth, better players every single year, even if you're the top diggity dogs. Look at Geelong. They've just added so much more strength into that side. Same as Melbourne, done the same things. These are the top dogs of the competition, still adding to their list. Sydney couldn't get much business done over the off-season. I could be wrong. Sydney could make the top 4. Hell, they could make the bloody grand final and win it this year. But I just think the top sides have strengthened and Sydney haven't really, on top of losing a grand final. I just think someone's got to slip. There's always someone that slips, and I reckon it'll be Sydney, just down to 7th. But let's not forget as well, they flew up the ladder last year out of nowhere. So, like, finishing in 7th, if they were a normal side, is probably normal progression. So I'm going to have Sydney finishing in 7th. In 6th, I've got Richmond, who finished in 7th last year, so I have them climbing up 1 ladder spot. They've also added Taranto and Hopper, great midfielders. Get some oldies out, get Cochin out of the side, I reckon. Shane Edwards is gone. Taranto, Hopper, way better midfield, better ladder position. Simple football maths. So their midfield's going to be better. They never struggle for goals. Tom Lynch, Jack Rewalt, Noah Cumberland, Maurice Rioli. They've got goals, all right? They've got goals. Just like people who sign up to Drewzy's Athlete Academy, they have goals. The only question mark is really their defence, but with a better midfield, there will be less entries into their defensive 50, so they will concede less goals. Simple football maths. I rate the Tigers. I reckon they play in September. Don't reckon they make the top 4 just yet, though. Their list is still in a bit of a weird-ish spot. So I'm going to say the Tigers finish in 6th. The next 3 places I feel like could be in any position from here. So not too sure, but I'm going to go with Brisbane in 5th. The main reason I put them in 5th is because I want Freo to finish in the top 4. But beyond that, they've never really been a threat for 22 rounds. They're not the best home and away side in the competition. In the past, they've had these little slips in form, which has cost them precious premiership points. Having said that, though, I believe they can win the flag this year. I think they have all of the tools to win a flag. They've got a rock-solid defence, an elite midfield, which they have strengthened with Dunkley and Will Ashcroft in the draft. And then up forward, they've just got goal-getters, Danaher, Hipwood, no Mick anymore, but Jack Gunston in there. Cam Rayner is finally entering his prime and playing some real exciting footy. This Brisbane side, they're going to be up there for a while. This could be the year that they win the flag. I'm going to have them finishing in 5th, though, because I want to put Freo in the top 4. So in 4th place, surprisingly, I've put the Fremantle Dockers. But come on, this is fair. After the footy we played in 2022, beating Geelong at the Cattery, beating Melbourne at their home ground, we beat Brisbane. We compete with the best sides. Flagmantle will be back in 2023, loud and proud, baby. People know what Longmuir is doing now. The competition is on notice. What hurt us last year the most is slow starts, but once we gain momentum of a game, we usually don't let go until the final siren. And by that point, Michael Frederick's already hitting the gridiron, yo. Lob, Akers, Logue out. It's fine. I reckon we can replace all 3 of them. Lob with Jackson. Jackson's a better ruckman in my opinion anyway. We've got forward reinforcements to replace that Lob, roll, is what I was trying to say. Logue was never a best defender anyway, and he wasn't a good forward. He was just sort of like a role player, utility man. So we're not going to miss him too much. In that wing position that Akers played, I think we can see maybe even Hayden Young, Heath Chapman push up there. Carl Warner come in from the 2s and do a good role there as well. So I think we've got the players to fill the gaps that have been left by our outgoing players. And I think those replacements will be better for the long-term success of Freo as well, given that those players that left are older players. We're a young side, everyone knows this. Luke Jackson, one of the best ruckmen in the comp, replacing Rory Lobb every day of the week. As I said, we've added to our forward stocks with Josh Corbett. We just need some forwards in there that know how to play footy and kick a goal and don't only run in a straight line. I'm not saying any names, but we'll also see Jai Amos come in and play hopefully 22 games this season in the home and away year. He'll kick 30 plus goals. He's one to watch for the future in terms of great young forward prospects. Our defence remains one of the best in the comp. Our midfield on its day, one of the best in the comp. Freo can compete with the best. We showed it in 2022. You can't argue against it now. We finished 5th last year. I reckon we continue to improve as we have done ever since Longmuir has taken over. And I reckon we could play for a spot in a prelim in the first week of September, potentially even be in a prelim. This young side is going to do good things. I reckon Collingwood hop up one spot and finish in third in 2023. The advantage that Collingwood get from a home crowd is second to none in the AFL. Say what you want about Collingwood fans, but no crowd has a bigger influence on games than the Collingwood supporter base. And when everyone wrote them off last year, they've sprung up, played the most exciting footy in the competition, and they've entered a premiership window out of nowhere, adding Tom Mitchell and a literal bull magnet to that side, and Dan McStay, they call him Mitts because he's a great mark. It's going to add more balance to their forward line. Lots of their games last year were decided by very small margins, as we all know. So if they stop giving teams a head start, or if they stop going AFK in one quarter of games to make games interesting and actually play four-quarter footy, they're going to be such a hard side to beat. Definitely premiership contenders in 2023 for me. Collingwood are a scary side. I'm going to say the D's finished second in 2023. I think despite their disappointing final series, they're still the best or maybe the second best team in the comp. Last year, they just pissed it through the first half of the year, and everyone thought they were just going to walk to a premiership until the mighty Freo Dockers come to the MCG, shook them up and rattled the second half of their season. That's what happened. You can't tell me any differently. It was clear that in the second half of the season, lots of Melbourne players were playing through injury or returning from injury when they were probably underdone due to, well, lack of squad depth, I suppose. Brody Grundy taking some of the ruck load from Max Gawn, which allows Gawn to go around the ground a lot more, which he's one of the best in the comp at. And Lachie Hunter's going to bring that kick inside 50, which the D's missed so much last year. The inside 50 ball use was putrid at times, and I think Lachie Hunter is that key master to unlock the forward line potential of the D's. And speaking of forward line potential, I reckon Jacob Van Rooyen has a breakout year. Kicked 36 goals in the VFL last year at the age of 19. He's a massive kid. I've worked with him closely through my time of training athletes. I know the potential that he has, and I know what he can bring to the Melbourne D's. So I reckon Grundy, Hunter, and Van Rooyen make all the difference for the D's this year, and I think they have a better second half of the season and finish in second again. That leaves Geelong on top, going back-to-back as minor premiers, which is hard to argue against when they absolutely pissed the second half of last year. They play all their home games just about at Cardinia Park, where no team seems to be able to get a win, and they've somehow corrupted the system to bring in elite young talent. Jai Clark, Ollie Henry from Collingwood, obviously Tanner Bruin from GWS, and that Gold Coast geezer as well that they got for a bag of chips. So they've added a lot of speed to their side, which some Geelong fans say they may have missed at points last year. Hawkins won't age because he's just a robot. Jeremy Cameron will slam in another 60 goals like it's nobody's business. And I reckon the Cats just stay on top again, because they always are, aren't they? Right, there's the ladder done. So let's go Coleman. I'm going to go Jeremy Cameron. I reckon he missed too many games last year. If he didn't miss those games, he would have won the Coleman, but he did miss those games, so he didn't win the Coleman. I think he'll win the Coleman. Brownlow, bias, but Brayshaw. Andrew. He gets better every single week, Andrew Brayshaw. I expect Freo to improve, and a big reason for that is always Andrew Brayshaw. He's going to be the captain of our club one day. Puts in a shift every single week. Gets 3 votes every other week. Andrew Brayshaw. So young. So much room to improve. I reckon he could win the Brownlow this year. And now for the flag. Give me a drum roll, please. I'm going to go the Melbourne Demons. Now, this has heavy Caden McDonald bias, I must say. But I reckon the D's do what Richmond did a few years ago. They win a flag, have a bad performance in finals, and then bounce back to announce that they could potentially be a dynasty. I think their club culture is great. Their list profile is there to win a premiership. They already have. They have the final experience to do so. They've added Brody Grundy, so they're going to have 2 of the best 5 rucks in the competition in their side at the same time. We've never seen that before. How is it going to work? It could be hectic. I reckon they manage their players better as well from a strength and conditioning point of view, which is what I do. Head to drewzysathleteacademy.com and all that. But I reckon they manage their players better so they're not injured in the back half of the season, which allows them to go into finals fresh to play their best footy. So Melbourne win the flag. And that's going to be the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure you leave a like before you click off the video and comment down below your predictions. I want to see every one of you putting your predictions in down below so I can laugh at you, you can laugh at me, and we can all laugh at each other down in the bloody comments. If you're a kid wanting to improve your life, I can help you do that with Drewzy's Athlete Academy. So if you want to have a chat about that, head to my Instagram and we can sort that out. Free video call, and follow up the socials while you're at it @_Drewzy, @Drewzy.athleteacademy, and on TikTok it's @Drewzy.uk because I'm in the UK doing UK things. But that's going to be another AFL season predictions. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care, you plonkers.